They say you can't hide from the law forever. While this may be true, there are some criminals who manage to execute horrific yet mind-boggling crimes like never before. Keeping the authorities on their toes, these treacherous men became billionaires of the underworld. They built for themselves massive empires, controlled entire cities, and most of all, created so much fear that people shuddered at just hearing their sinister names. Who were these legendary villains? Why is the world in awe of them? From Bugsy Siegel and Al Capone to the infamous Pablo Escobar, we will discuss the most notorious criminals of all time. Continue watching this video to find out. Make sure to subscribe to our channel, Legendary Figures, for more exciting videos. Without further ado, let's begin. Bugsy Siegel. Starting off with the notorious hitman, Bugsy Siegel. Originally called Benjamin Siegel, he was born in Brooklyn, New York, into a poor Russian immigrant family. Siegel was intent on rising up from the destitution that surrounded him, and by the age of 14, he started his own gang. But his true colors really showed when he partnered up with Mayor Lansky and Lucky Luciano. Together they ran massive bootlegging operations, racketeering and money laundering in Lower Manhattan. Siegel also founded the Murder Incorporation. The name speaks for itself. Ruthless to the bone, Siegel is responsible for the contract killings of more than 50 men. Why was he called Bugsy though? Well, that's the nickname his friends gave him for his short temper. He was as crazy as a bug. Ironically, this name infuriated him even more as the word bug reminded him of the poverty he was born in. Back to his life as a mobster, Bugsy spent a lot of his time in Las Vegas, gambling and robbing tourists. The hitman finally met his end at the hands of none other than a hitman. In 1947, he was found dead in his home, riddled with bullets. Albert Anastasia. Albert Mad Hatter Anastasia was born on September 26, 1902 in Calabria, Italy. This cold-blooded mobster was a real menace. People literally used to call him the one-man army or the earthquake. He committed the highest number of assassinations ever done in the history of all gangs, instilling immense fear among his subjects. Albert was a sly fox. He would use the art of lying, deception, and backstabbing to get to the top. This is exactly how he played one party against the other, causing the Castellamare War. He accomplished this feat with the help of Lucky Luciano, whom we will talk about later in this video. Working his way to the top, Anastasia became the boss of the Gambino crime family as well as the Murder Inc. organization. Furthermore, Anastasia had control over New York's waterfront as well as various dock worker unions. Albert's actions eventually caught up to him. In 1957, he was successfully assassinated by two gunmen while getting a haircut. The order was given by his own gang members, Vito Genovese and Carlo Gambino. Well, even the most invincible of gang members are not exempt from the fact that what goes around comes around. Lucky Luciano. Next up is the despicable Lucky Luciano. What crimes did he commit to earning the title of the father of organized crime? Charles Luciano was born in Italy but migrated very early to America. Right from childhood, he was very ambitious to succeed in the underworld and ultimately joined the 5 Points gang by age 10. Mixing brutality with brains, he would go on to become the most genius mobster of all time. Luciano was behind the establishment of the Commission, which was basically a board of members for keeping peace within the underworld. In 1931, the Castellamare War took place between drug cartels led by Joe Masseria and Salvatore Massimino. Lucky partnered up with the notorious Albert Anastasia and assassinated both the cartel leaders one after the other. This resulted in the Luciano family taking hold of the entire American mafia with Luciano as the boss. In 1936, however, it seemed that Lucky ran out of luck. In an extensive prosecution case led by the American DA Thomas E. Dewey, Lucky was arrested for a massive prostitution ring he was running and was sentenced to 30 to 50 years in jail. The seat of the empire was handed over to Frank Costello, another infamous crime boss we will discuss in a bit. Was prison the end for Lucky Luciano? While we reveal the rest of the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel, Legendary Figures, for more thrilling videos. Let's get back to the 1930s when Lucky was rotting in prison. Soon enough in 1939, WW2 broke out and the US Navy needed information about warfronts in Sicily. Yes, the exact place where Lucky's gang ruled. In return for information, Lucky was set free. However, he was extradited to Cuba. The authorities thought that this would stop him from continuing his drug business. But little did they know, Lucky built for himself a luxurious home in Cuba, as well as a crime syndicate smuggling drugs into the US. He died in Cuba of natural causes. Frank Costello. the real Godfather who inspired the character of the beloved Don Vito Corleone. Now Costello was a man who played the crime game a bit different from the others. He was not a man of violence. Rather, he possessed the qualities of a true diplomat, the ultimate chessman who was an expert at making the right moves across the board. He would do favors for politicians, government officials, and the police only to pull their strings later. Rightfully earning the title of the Prime Minister of the Underworld, Frank also had a clever eye for business. His famous slot machine trade brought in millions of dollars. Being an ally with the likes of Lucky Luciano, Vito Genovese, and Arnold Rothstein, he would rise in the Cosa Nostra by orchestrating massive bootlegging and racketeering operations. It was in 1935, when Lucky Luciano went to prison, that he appointed Frank as the new head of the Luciano family's empire. The syndicate grew to its greatest height under his leadership. But Frank stepped down when an assassination attempt was made on his life, ordered by Genovese out of jealousy. Although Frank spent the remaining years of his life away from the dark and deceitful mob life, he is praised even to this day for being the greatest Machiavellian of all crime bosses. Amato Carrillo Fuentes. Amato Carrillo Fuentes was also known as the ruler of the skies because of the large number of airplanes he used to transport cocaine all over the globe. He was born and raised in Mexico with 11 other siblings. Drug trafficking ran in the Carrillo family. Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo, leader of the Guadalajara cartel, was Amato's uncle. The young mobster started his own drug business guided by his uncle's instructions. Employing ruthlessness and violence, he eventually became the most powerful drug trafficker, smuggling cocaine from Latin America to the USA. In 1993, he assassinated his boss Rafael Aguilar Guajardo and became the head of the Juarez cartel. Through his drug trades, he built himself an entire empire and earned more than $20 billion. But of course, nothing lasts forever. The authorities were taking him constantly, which is why he went into hiding. He wasn't really content with being holed up for the rest of his life and decided to turn over a new leaf. How would he go about that though his face was plastered all over the newspapers and international TV? There was no choice but to get plastic surgery and transform his entire face. During the operation, however, he died of complications. If you think this is shocking, wait until the end of the video to be truly amazed. Al Capone. This video would be incomplete if we did not mention Al Capone's name. He's the notorious gangster who put the term organized in organized crime. With the enforcement of the Prohibition Act in 1921, Al Capone seized the opportunity to make loads of cash through bootlegging liquor. He was considered to be the richest man of his time, worth more than $3 billion. As a young boy, he joined the 5 Points Gang. Rising in the mob world, he, later on, ran the entire Chicago Outfit Gang. One of his many violent attacks on rival gangs includes the Bloody St. Valentine's Massacre. Al Capone was not going to let anyone come between him and his money-making felonies. But just like most of us, he could not escape the tax authorities. In 1931, he was sentenced to 11 years in prison for tax evasion. He died of syphilis just a few years later. Although we have discussed quite some legendary names, but there's still someone missing. The most infamous of all criminals. The bosses of all bosses. Who could that be? Pablo Escobar. There's only one name that pops up in our mind when we hear the words cocaine and Colombia. That's right. It's Pablo Escobar, the king of the drug mafia. He was hated by many but considered a hero in his homeland. Not only that, he was one of the richest men in the world according to Forbes magazine, with his net worth being $30 billion. Jaw-dropping for us but laughable for the people around him, as Pablo's son himself stated that the authorities will never find out the true amount of money his father actually had. Head of the Medellin cartel, Pablo controlled 80% of the cocaine smuggled into the US and made $60 million each day. He had a separate jet just for transporting his money, even buying an island so that it could refuel. Known for his ruthless and bloody ways, Pablo ordered the assassination of about 1,000 policemen, 200 judges, and a presidential candidate. He was also responsible for bombing a plane in which 200 people died. With drug wars turning ugly, thousands were killed. Despite the hard outer core, Pablo had a soft side in him too. Once, while on the run from the cops, stuck in a jungle, he burned $2 million to keep his daughter warm. He was also nicknamed the Robin Hood, as he spent a lot of money on charity and helping the poor. Not only that, he offered to pay the Colombian government's debt, which was a whopping $10 billion. The state, of course, declined. Did Pablo go to jail for his crimes? No. The violent man eventually met his violent end at the age of 44. Fleeing the police, he was shot in a frantic rooftop chase. Although gone, Pablo's legend of being one of the most ruthless and successful drug lords still lives on. Which of these powerful criminals shocked you the most? Are we missing some important names? If yes, let us know in the comments down below, and we will get back to you with another video.